Good day, folks, and welcome to the Anorak Review Show with our host, the Anorak. 8th of January 2022 marks what would be, or would have been, the 75th birthday of classic rock singer David Bowie. And also Stephen Hawking's 80th, so make of that if you will. Anyways, with this particular day, I figured I'd review an album of his, but which to go with exactly? Well, aside from the fact that you may have already found out from the title and thumbnail, but I digress. Just last year, in my second episode ever, I reviewed his swan song, or rather swan album, 2016's Black Star, a mostly experimental but still very bittersweet album that mostly deals with mortality, inevitability, and existentialism, which pretty much fits since the album was released just a few days away from Bowie's eventual passing, and he was dying from such a condition while making that album. And so today, I want to look at an album of his that he made back in the heyday of the mid to late 70s. So, without any further ado, let's dig into David Bowie's 1977 album, Low, and see if this was a, if you pardon the pun, high point of Bowie's musical career.
Side A begins with Speed of Light, a synth rocky instrumental which acts as a sort of prelude or overture to the overall album. Aside from the surreal use of synthesizers by David himself, the drums add this almost industrial feel to the track. This, combined with the plucky bass, guitars, and very distant sounds of it, also create this alien-like mood to it as well. In fact, apparently, Bowie did intend to write some lyrics to go along for the song, but eventually decided not to go with it, believing that the music stood better without his vocals. Which, listening to it, I can kinda get. You can tell that, since it follows some sort of formula, that you could hear an imaginary singing to it, but I still agree with him that the music does speak for itself. I mean, just look at the few bits of music I made over at my other channel, which I may or may not be plugging over, by the way, for Mars. Sorry. Next is Breaking Glass, not only featuring Bowie's vocals, but it's also the shortest song of the album, possibly the shortest he ever made at all, clocking in at 1 minute and 52 seconds. Wow. And right off, the song itself has this fractured, disjointed, and almost schizophrenic vibe to it, and with very few lyrics, if I could even call them that, more or less phrases if anything else, with Bowie telling us that he has been breaking glass again, implying that he has done something like this before, like breaking windows, or breaking like actual wine glasses and cups and all that. Then he says he drew something awful on a carpet, which I'm probably going to assume is just some dirty My Little Pony fan art, perhaps. Then he goes out by saying we're wonderful people, but we have problems, and he'll never touch us, seeming to claim that there's nothing wrong with us, but yet implying that instead there's something wrong with him, admittingly so, and how he may never be able to make any contact with us in such a state or condition. These lyrics and music combined help create this musical interpretation of a psychosis or a brief breakdown, which was possibly what Bowie himself was going through since he started doing mainly cocaine by the mid-70s, and this greatly influenced him in his songwriting, for better and worse. As Keith Haring would tell you, crack is whack. So don't do drugs, kids. Seriously. Even if you aspire to be a musician or actor, celebrity, or whatever, just don't do any drugs, man. Just, even as someone who's never tried any, just don't go with it. Your life is better than it. That sense of franticness continues with What in the World? As in, what in the world is this song? Well, this song here is actually not bad either. I mean, it's Bowie. Anything he touched would practically turn gold. The lyrics seem to follow this linear, or rather non-linear approach, with some reoccurring phrases about a girl with grey eyes who never leaves her room, and Bowie yearning for her love. In a way, it naturally continues from Breaking Glass, where in that, Bowie expresses fear that he may be able to never touch the listener, but here he already starts to gain a bit of hope when he finds this girl who seems to be just as much a shut-in like he is. Or maybe this girl is part of his imagination. Or maybe she's a physical form of his amnema or amnema, which is often according to Jungian theory, the feminine form within the male or the masculine. The song also carries on that theme of taking mundane instruments and making them sound surreal. Not only thanks to the production of Tony Visconti, I'm probably butchering that name, who produced nearly all of Bowie's studio albums, but also with Brian Eno on synth creating that video gamey blop sound that runs across the track, but also featuring Iggy Pop himself on backing vocals. How's that for a collaboration? Bowie, Iggy, and Eno. Three may often be a crowd for the most part, but here, it's a match made in heaven. After that is Sound and Vision, the first single of the album and probably the most well-known song from it. With its bright, simple, and catchy melody and chord progression, yet ironically, we have until halfway through this 3-minute tune when we actually get more of Bowie singing again. Before then, we get some nice scatting from Tony's then wife Mary Hopkins as well as Brian Eno, and even Bowie himself playing a nice yet brief saxophone solo, which I gotta give props for. In terms of lyrics, it's about a reclusive guy who sits around in his electric blue coloured room with blinds closed and waiting for the sound and vision, likely referring to some kind of inspiration after a long period of writer's block. Once again, advancing this subtle narrative or narrative from the previous two tracks, with Bowie gradually getting out of his drug high and addiction and trying to get back his senses together properly, mainly his hearing and sight, hence sound and vision. Aside from that, this is a pretty sweet and almost iconic and recognizable song from Bowie's discography, with its carefree and happy-go-lucky mood, which sounds like something you'd listen to in your head while getting up from bed or even walking casually down a street, even with its fantastic contrast with this dark introspective content within. It's no wonder why this became one of his more well-known songs. It's both dark, yet both bright. It's deep, yet very simple. It's catchy, and it's also thought-provoking. Sound and Vision is definitely a visionary piece of music. Then there's Always Crashing in the Same Car. Definitely leaning more on the psychedelic side of things, this track is actually inspired by a real accident, or incident, that Bowie was in during his cocaine addiction. With a few verses, the song itself tells a bit of a rough, brief recap of what happened, albeit with some liberties. With the theme of inevitability, Bowie sings about how even when he looks from left to right and traffic lights and all that, he's always going to crash his same old car somehow, not helped by someone named Jasmine Peepin. Between this and one of his previous albums being titled Aladdin Sane, Bowie must have predicted that Disney version of Aladdin by 15 odd years, hasn't he? But as for the true event itself, basically one night Bowie drove his Mercedes to a drug dealer who he thought ripped him off, so as an act of revenge, he deliberately rammed his own car against the dealer's car and went off. Afterwards, he drove to his hotel's underground car park or garage and started making tire donuts in it. Hence the lyric, "As I pushed down my foot to the floor, I was going round and round the hotel garage." Another reason why you should never do drugs. Not only will you be crashing your car deliberately, which may or may not even belong to you, into someone's car, but you'll also be doing tire donuts as well. After the psychedelic downer of always crashing in the same car, the second single, Be My Wife, mostly sets aside the electronic bits, bobs, bleeps, and pieces, and makes way for a raggy piano as well as more emphasized guitar to take hold in this somewhat somber yet still bouncy beat of a song. The minimalist lyrics, which may not be saying much at this point, seem to deal with loneliness and an almost sarcastic desire for companionship. Bowie says that we sometimes get lonely and get nowhere, while he has left every place and has lived around the world. Which, being an international rock star having to sing and perform in front of countless audiences, of course he does. Or did. And he begs the listener to be his wife, to share his life, to stay with him. And, well, like I said, be his wife. The set of lines get repeated one other time before the last third closes out with some more of our discordant piano and some emotional guitars before fading out entirely, leaving it on a somewhat bizarre yet still very uncertain closure. All in all, Be My Wife is, for lack of a better word, an oddity of a track, even by David Bowie standards, and that's why I like it. Side A ends with A New Career in a New Town, another instrumental piece that acts as a bookend of the first side along with Speed of Life. It returns to the domination of haunting yet uplifting synthesizers, while throwing in a bit of a click track and some harmonica in there as well, reminding me a bit of Dreams by Fleetwood Mac. It gives off this sense of resolution after quite a bit of uneasiness and uncertainty from the previous songs. And going off from the very name of this track, it seems to represent how Bowie has possibly turned over a new leaf. After so much drug taking and car wrecking, he has finally broken himself free from all that and decides to move to a new town where he gets a new career. Of course, he still remained a singer and musician, but hey, it's a new musical career, so splitting hairs and all. Something you may also notice here so far is that most of the songs here are very short, and I mean very short. I already mentioned Breaking Glass being under 2 minutes, but only Sound Vision and Always Crashing in the Same Car managed to pass the 3-minute mark. This is by no means a bad thing though, just something worth of note. This may more or less add to the fragmentary vibe that Bowie and crew may have been trying to go for here with the first half of this album.